Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 20 of The Painter and the Pixie.
Ooh.
I am Serina Vassar, one of your hosts, and over here is Jeremy Vassar, our other host.
Hello.
My husband.
That's me.
Yes. In this episode of the show, I am really excited for you guys to listen to it. We talk all about service dogs.
Ooh, buddy.
One of the topics we've gotten a lot of questions about over the course of The Painter and the Pixie. So we talk all about service dog laws, service dog etiquette, what is a service dog, and give a little bit of tips at the end there for resources, whether where you might be able to get a service dog or learn about service dogs if they might be able to help you.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a pretty good show. I think we covered quite a lot of information, and please do feel free. I know I'll probably say this in the outro too, but feel free to contact me with any questions. I am always absolutely more than happy to talk about service dogs. I could talk about service dogs till the cows come home. It was a struggle to keep it to an hour here.
Yeah, man, it's all good. Something you're passionate about for sure. So, all right, guys, well, without further ado, please enjoy episode 20 of The Painter and the Pixie.
This is only the beginning.
All right, ready?
Ready?
What you're going to hear about today is nothing short of a miracle.
Well, I don't believe it.
Let's find out. Ready, set, go.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you? Got something to do now. What's up, girl?
Hi, Jeremy.
Talk about service dogs today.
Yeah, we are.
It's my own little intro song for
Yeah,
you.
I like it. It's
Yeah.
cute.
Yeah, I'll do Winnie the Pooh sometime too.
Okay, yeah, that's fun.
it's a
We'll
good one.
Find that, sneak that in there somewhere.
Yeah, why not? Sprinkle it in.
Sure.
So, topic of the day.
Service dogs.
Service dogs. What?
Yeah, I got a lot of questions, obviously, about service dogs, and I think it's time that we have a podcast episode to chat about service dogs and Mr. Gus Gus.
Yep, who is slightly out of frame. So.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind then.
yeah, but I'm sure he'll be popping his head in here and there and everywhere. So, how would you like to kick off the, do you want to explain kind of what service dogs are for those that don't know, and you kind of have your spiel,
Yeah.
so I thought I would just kind of cut you loose on it.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to spend some time talking about service dogs on the show because a lot of people don't really know what they are. And we've mentioned Gus and we've mentioned service dogs sprinkled all throughout all of our episodes. And this is episode 20. So it's been quite a while that we've chatted about this, but we haven't really explained. So and I've gotten some questions, some feedback from listeners asking
Right.
about service dogs. So I thought, hey, what a great way to answer all these questions at once. It's just like do a show about service dogs.
There you go. Fire
Yes.
away.
So let's start off with some basics. What is a service dog? Now, if I were going to ask you that, what do you think a service dog is?
A guide dog for the blind.
Yeah, okay, that's true. That's a good one. That's a good option. That is a type of service dog. So a service dog, legally speaking, if you want to get the technical definition, is any dog, can be any breed, any size, it doesn't matter. There are no restrictions, that has been specifically task trained to assist an individual who has a disability.
Okay.
Right?
Yep.
It's a very broad definition. So let's get a little bit further into the nitty gritty of what that looks like. So a disability. What is the definition of a disability? According to legislation, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the ADA law, that's what is primarily quoted and looked at when you're dealing with service animals, is any function, anything that is limiting someone in a major life capacity. So being able to see counts as a major life limitation. So that's why you have guide dogs. Being able to take care of oneself effectively, being able to leave the house alone safely. Those are all types of things that would qualify you as technically being disabled.
Okay.
So to have a service dog, anyone in the world, well, I shouldn't say in the world, anyone here in America who would like to have information about getting a service dog or wants to get a service dog, the only people who are legally allowed to obtain a service dog is someone who has a legal disability. So you can't just say, well, I want one, so I'm going to get one.
Okay.
Right? There's good things, there's positives and negatives about the way that the laws are currently structured. And I will say that state to state, there are a little bit of different laws. So I'm going to be primarily speaking in the state of Pennsylvania, since that's what I'm most familiar with. Mm-hmm. But a service dog is assisting anybody who has difficulty with managing some aspect of daily life. So a service dog is, like I said, specially task trained. So what does task training mean? A whole bunch of different things. We'll talk about some details of that. One of them, in like the example you gave of a seeing eye dog, a guide dog, because a seeing eye dog is actually from a program called The Seeing Eye. But there are lots of other guide dogs for the blind that aren't that category.
I gotcha. Okay.
So some tasks, some things that service dogs can be trained to help people with is guiding them, right? There's a lot of dogs out there now that are medical alert dogs. So this category of medical alert is really large. That can be something like seizure detection or seizure response, in which the dog is trained to either respond and alert you before you would have a seizure or help you after you've had a seizure, bring you medication, bring you a telephone to call 911 if you need an ambulance, have medical information available inside their little pouch, go get help. That's a really big task for people who have medical alert dogs. And another one that's more and more popular is the diabetic alert dog. DAD, Dad.
Okay.
Diabetic alert dogs are trained to smell glucose levels on your breath. And they can detect whether you're too high or too low. So it's all about scent training. These dogs are not magic. A lot of people see service dogs and they think they're just magic. They just know. How do they just know? They sense these things. No, there's a lot of rigorous training that goes into becoming a service dog. Yeah?
Yep. I gotcha.
Okay. So let's take a step back and talk about some legal requirements here. When you have a service dog, the service dog, if you are a legally disabled person who legally requires having a service dog with you, then you can take the dog. The dog has public access rights. Public access rights means that the dog can go anywhere that you as a human are allowed to go in public. So restaurants, shopping malls, grocery stores, all these types of locations are perfectly permissible for the dog to come with you. And that is because a service dog is legally identified as a piece of medical equipment.
Gotcha. Okay.
They're not a pet.
Yeah.
Yes, they are a pet. You do take care of them. You love them. They get time to be a dog for sure, but they are legally classified as a piece of medical equipment.
Okay.
So if you were disabled in such a way where you required the use of a wheelchair, you can go anywhere with your wheelchair, right? No one's going to say you can't come into this restaurant with a wheelchair.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Same thing with service dogs.
And then at some point, are you going to address the differences between an emotional support animal?
Yes.
Because I think
That's a great one.
that is something that I have seen get misinterpreted, or people will say, "Oh, I have a service dog." And it's like, no, you don't.
Yeah, and they don't understand what that means.
And there's quite a significant disparity, particularly with the training and the expectations. And then you have had quite a number of experiences where people have been like, you had a lady that had dogs barking and going crazy.
I'll talk about that.
Yeah. So I want to make sure we hit that at some point too, in differentiating between an emotional support animal, a therapy dog, which Gus often gets confused with, even amongst people in my own family.
I know.
So, and they think those are all interchangeable: service dog, therapy dog, and then emotional support animal. And those are all three very, very, very different things.
Okay,
so,
perfect. Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. So let's talk about that right now.
Yeah.
Service dog, as we just defined, is a dog that has been specifically task trained to mitigate someone's disability. You could have a disability, but if the dog is not trained to mitigate your disability, to help you with it, it doesn't count as a service dog.
Yeah.
Right?
And I want to emphasize the level of training that each of these animals generally gets. Now, it's different for each task. Each task obviously requires, a seeing eye dog or a guide dog is going to be trained differently than a dog that's going to be a diabetic alert dog.
Right.
They're not going to do scent training as much. They're focused on
different things.
The guide work, just different set of skills. So, anyway.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's really nice to point out, because a service dog, so let's talk about, we have 4 major categories of working dogs in America typically that you see: service dog, therapy dog, facility dog.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And emotional support animal.
Okay.
Now, I will say, I'm going to qualify that first one. Service dog is an accurate term when you're working with a canine, but legally, get this, you know this, but I'm going to totally share.
I knew you were going to say this.
Legally, it should be called a service or assistance animal, because dogs are allowed to be assistance animals, and so are miniature horses.
Yeah, that was ridiculous when you told me that. Yeah.
Yeah, so if you see someone walking around with a guide harness on a service horse, they are not full of shit.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. This law was changed and altered to allow for miniature horses for people who have severe dog allergies so
Right.
that they can still have a guide animal
Yeah.
or assistance animal that way too. Because a really big category of assistance animal is mobility support. So sometimes the person weighs too much, or we'll talk about that too, and they need a more sturdy animal.
Right.
So a
right.
miniature horse is perfectly allowed by law.
How big are these miniature horses?
I mean, they're not big.
So, but you're holding
Like some dogs are bigger than this service horse.
It's about like 2.5 feet high,
to
3
the
feet
shoulder.
high, to the shoulder. Okay. Do you know how much those things are weighing in at?
I don't. I should have looked this up before we did the show.
They have to be at least 100 pounds. Some of those.
Oh yeah, at least 100 pounds. They're
Yeah.
probably close to 120.
Because horses are like thick. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's a
and I've
big-
seen them. I mean, not in real life. I've seen things on the internet and YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah.
They're not very common because first of all, people don't know that that's a legal possibility. Second of all, it's a whole lot of work to keep a horse,
Even a miniature one.
even a miniature one.
Yeah.
And it takes longer to train a miniature horse as a service animal. But the interesting thing, and I thought about this later, is like, oh, longevity is so much more. A typical average working life of a dog is 8 years.
Right. Right.
And a horse could be 20 years.
Interesting. I didn't know that even the miniature ones live longer.
Yeah. So
All
that
right.
you could have, it might take you 3 years to train that horse, but then you've got a working career of 16 years.
Wow.
As opposed to 8.
Yeah, and you would definitely have to get another dog in that time span.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So it's fascinating. So if you see that, that's totally true. So totally legal. So service animals are extraordinarily highly trained animals. By law, they only have to know tasks that mitigate the person's disability. But by culture, they have to be impeccably well behaved. No barking. They must sit. When you say sit, they have to know all of their service commands and even general behavior commands perfectly.
Yeah.
Almost without fault. Now, they are not robots. They are still dogs, so they can have bad days. They can have problems, but on the majority, the whole, they're impeccably well behaved.
Yeah.
A dog could be barking in their face right next to them, and they'll just be like, whatever.
Right.
They have to kind of be bomb-proof.
Yeah.
Because service dogs go with their handlers everywhere. So if you're in Philadelphia watching the fireworks on 4th of July, they can't be freaking out and running in circles and barking. They
Yeah.
just lay calmly at your feet,
Yeah.
hang out.
They're not barking. They're not, snapping at people.
Right, never.
They're not getting unsettled by things. You can take them on planes. Like that kind of stuff doesn't freak them out.
Right.
So, and
They're
then
very well behaved that way, and they've
going-
had a lot of experience. So that is typically when you have a service dog, they are in training for 2 or more years before they are released to be partnered with their handlers
right.
from
right.
organizations anyway.
All right. So then let's talk about therapy
So
dogs.
that is going to be, if we're going to give, I'm going to give a picture example for people. That's
Okay.
a PhD level of training, right? What's
Yeah.
the highest level of schooling? PhD?
Yeah, PhD. I was going to equate it to like each one of those dogs has a black belt in some level of martial
Yes,
art.
a black belt or
Yeah.
a red belt, whatever, if that's more than a black belt. Black belt with a red stripe.
A black belt would be significant, particularly in like jiu-jitsu. So that
So
would be
that
where
is
I
the
would put
level
them,
of
yeah.
training. Let's go with that analogy. So
Yeah.
that's the level of training. Then we move to therapy dog. The next tier down is
Yeah.
therapy dog. Now it's not right next to it. It's a significant gap between service animal quality of characteristics and then therapy dog. A therapy dog requirement for a therapy dog is that it is well behaved. Sit down, come. That's it. They really just have to know the basics. Sit down, stay, come,
Yeah.
place maybe. They don't even have to know place. They have to be very well behaved, and that's it. Their job is
And-
to go around and provide comfort for people
Very non-aggressive
and non-aggressive.
and usually like a cuddle bunny. So
Yeah, pretty much a lot of times cuddle bunny.
yeah.
But there's no specific requirement for tasks. They don't know how to. They don't have to retrieve things. They don't have to do medical alert. They don't have to go get help. They don't do anything like that. All they do is provide comfort for people. That is a therapy dog. Their therapeutic role is to provide comfort and happiness for individuals. The level of access that a service dog has is anywhere an individual is allowed to go in public. The service dog is required to be able to go with that person, the handler.
Yeah.
A therapy dog does not have public access rights. Therapy dog is only allowed to be in places that they have been invited, such as hospitals, nursing homes, school environments, those types of things.
Okay.
So you cannot take your therapy dog with you to have a meal at a restaurant.
Right.
Not allowed.
Right.
Completely false.
Yeah.
So therapy dog. provide comfort. That's their only role, and they are fairly well behaved, non-aggressive, very much non-aggressive. They're not
Right.
going to bark. Oh, and any of these animals, service dog or therapy dog, won't defecate or urinate inside of a building.
Right.
That's
right.
another requirement.
Yeah, it's kind of frowned upon.
Yes. So did you have a question? Did I cut you off?
No, I just wanted to point to the level of training disparity
Mm-hmm.
between the two.
Yeah, so
So-
the therapy dog has virtually no training. Hardly any. Now, people can train therapy dogs to do fun tricks. The difference between a trick and a task, as far as language goes, is that the task mitigates your disability. Now, if you don't have a disability, so for example, here's a really fun example. A lot of people who have mobility impairment actually train the dog to go open the refrigerator and bring them a bottle of water so they can take their medication and then go close the refrigerator,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That is a task if you are mobility impaired and it's helping to mitigate your disability. It's just a cool trick if you don't have any of those issues. And
Yeah,
you,
'cause
want to
you-
teach your dog to bring you a beer from the fridge.
I was going to say, that's what I would do.
Yes. So some of them look exactly the same,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it depends on their usage.
But the level of training is significant. So
Yeah.
the level of training disparity between the two.
Yes.
So because like a service dog, depending on what task they're performing, I mean, you're looking at 2+ years of training a
Yeah.
lot of times.
Yeah.
So I mean that's pretty standard.
It is pretty standard. Yeah,
So-
it's very much standard.
And you could probably get, if you had a dog that had a decent temperament, you could probably get them to like therapy level in like what, a couple months?
6 weeks.
6 weeks?
Yeah, 6 weeks. There's something called, if anybody's interested in helping to get their dog to just be better behaved, a lot of places around, especially in this Bucks County area in general, you can find a lot of places. You can do something called a CGC, which is the Canine Good Citizen Test. And that is typically a 6 to 8 week course, a public course. You're available to go take it with, whatever, PetSmart even does it sometimes, where you can learn, sit down, stay calm. There's 10 requirements, and I forget all of them. One of them is to walk politely on a leash. The other one is to sit politely with a stranger. So if you have to hand off the leash and you go off someplace, they're not going to freak out.
Yeah.
To stand politely, to get groomed. They're not reactive. If you have them on the grooming table, you can clip their nails, pick up their paw, pick up their tail, and they're not going to be reactive.
Yeah.
That is a fantastic course if you just want a good citizen of a dog.
Yeah.
CGC.
Yeah.
That's basically the only requirement for therapy work. And that's not even legally required. That's just the most common tactic people use for a therapy dog.
Gotcha.
Now, while we're talking about legal requirements for training, I want to go and dispel a very popular myth about service dogs. There is no legal requirement whatsoever on the national level requiring service dogs to be certified by any organization.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not needed, not required.
I feel like that's going to change at some point.
I feel like it will change, but I also feel like it needs to just be changed a little bit. I don't want there to be a full legal certification in some cases, unless there are more avenues that are easily available. So, for example, you go through a lot of organizations like the Seeing Eye or Paws for People. That's a really great one. They have certification programs. They have professional trainers who work with the dog, but in order to get the dog, it's $25,000.
Right.
Right? Because you're paying for all that time and energy and certification and process.
Yeah, so a lot
and
of
none of
hours,
this
man.
stuff is covered under insurance, not even for Seeing Eye dogs. All of that's donation only
Right.
because it's not required it's not seen as a medical requirement necessity the same way as a wheelchair is, which I think is ridiculous because a service dog can do more benefit for people and reduce medical bills significantly more than a wheelchair ever will. Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Depending on the circumstance.
Depending
for
on
sure.
the circumstance.
So yeah, particularly for Seeing Eye, I feel like
Yeah.
that should be covered under insurance if you're
Not-
blind.
none of it.
Okay, so
There
facility
is,
dog.
Well, hold on.
Okay.
So there's no legal requirement for certification, but that does not mean that you can't become certified. You can get your dog through an organization. We'll talk about what do you do if you think you qualify and how do you get one, but you don't need certification to have a real legit service dog. And if you go online and you register your dog as a service dog and you get a little packet in the mail, I am so sorry to tell you, but you've been scammed.
I didn't know that was a thing.
People do it all the time. You can register your toilet as a service dog. There's no requirement. They don't do any vetting. They just send you papers. And then these people take their dogs into public that have no training whatsoever, slap a service dog vest, hold up their paper that says this is a certified animal. And the dog's peeing and pooping and like eating off of somebody's plate next to them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Completely false. If you buy that stuff, you're totally breaking the law by lying about your dog being a service dog. You can literally serve jail time for that, and you've been scammed. So like bad news bears all the way around.
Yeah. Well, and you're doing a disservice to the people that have genuine disabilities
Yes.
that are having really well-behaved dogs out in public. That's why they have to go through training and, you know, why there's some requirements of them and how they should be behaving. And I think, you know, particularly with some folks that I know that have gone the emotional support route, they treat them like they're a service dog, and there's not enough delineation between what's what in public. And I think
There is in the law, but people just don't know. That's why we're talking about it.
Yeah, I just think it's going to get much more apparent with whether or not they're putting different colored vests on these dogs or something where it's easily identifiable, because a lot of people are taking advantage of even retail spaces and restaurants because they have some little cockapoo or whatever. Not knocking cockapoo, perfectly lovely dog. But like, you know, you're slapping a vest on it, it's not trained at all.
Yeah.
And
It has no reason to be in public.
Yeah, I love dogs, but if you're going to do that, and then, you know, I've even seen it myself where you have a dog that's aggressive and a big animal.
Yep.
Like, dude, that's idiotic. It's really
horrible.
it is a really bad move. You're putting yourself, and particularly if that dog does something aggressive in like inside of a Target, and he's got no right to be there. When they find out, you're going to be in big trouble, man. Like,
well, yes and no. The problem is that this is a rampant problem, and I'll tell a story about this with Gus. Gus is a service dog, a legit thousands of hours of training, of hours of training service dog.
Yep.
We were in, not knocking Bed Bath & Beyond, but we were in Bed Bath & Beyond one time, and this lady had 2 dogs in a shopping cart. Who were completely going nuts, aggressive, barking, freaking out. And the woman is like guarding the cart, and she's putting her hand out in front of me. Now, Gus is just sitting, completely chilled right by my left side in a perfect heel, looking up at me like, what's going on here? Like, are we going to go? Like, this is like, what's up with those 2 dudes over there?
Right.
Not growling, nothing, because he's a service dog. And this lady's like, no, don't come over here. Don't blocking her dogs. They're gonna be barking. Don't come over here. Don't come over here. Go away. To me, I have a legal right to have Gus with me in public. She is some lady who's bringing her 2 dogs into this store. And so what I did, I'm all about education. I want to help people to grow and understand. So I went over there was a manager team having a powwow about like prices of something, they were putting together their program. And I said, guys, excuse me, can I just pop my head in here for a minute? I'm sorry if this is a little bit rude, but I wanted to let you know that woman over here, I know you can tell she's causing a ruckus. Her dogs are not service dogs. You do not have to allow them to come into the store because places of business do not understand the laws correctly. They legally, places of business are allowed to ask someone with an animal, a service animal, or an animal in the shopping place 2 questions. 1, is that a service animal?
Yeah.
And 2, what tasks has that dog been trained to perform to mitigate your disability?
Right.
Which those are very powerful questions if you know that you're allowed to ask those questions. Most places like that don't know they're allowed to ask those questions. They're like, no, but what if it isn't? We're not allowed to ask her what her disability is. Like, neither of those questions ask her what her disability is.
Yeah.
You're legally not allowed to ask. That's discrimination. But you can ask what tasks is it performed to train, and is it a service dog? And then if you said, is that a service dog? And she said yes, which is going to be a lie.
Yeah.
Then you say, what tasks is this dog trained to perform? And if she says emotional comfort, this is for comfort, then that's also not a service dog. Emotional comfort does not legally count as a task performed by a service dog.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to get into, can we quickly just describe what a facility dog is and then the emotional support? Because I really want to hit on this emotional support thing, but let's do the facility dog thing real quick.
Okay. Yeah. We'll come back around to that.
Yeah.
So a facility dog, thanks. I'm sorry. I got on a tangent.
It's all right. No, you get fired up by it. But
I do.
I just want to make sure, because I want to come back to what Gus is and does and all of that stuff, but I want to get through the facility dog piece.
So a facility dog is a glorified therapy dog. A therapy dog is there for anybody who's in the building, right? If you go into a hospital or nursing home, right? The therapy dog is there for everybody. A facility dog, like your dad at Lakeside, has a whole bunch of facility dogs.
Yeah, I think he's got 5
They've
facility
got 5
dogs.
facility dogs now, and I think they've got 2 more on the way.
Probably, yeah.
I think so. But a facility dog is another great therapeutic tool. It is not task trained in the way that a service dog is trained, but they typically have a higher level of training than a therapy dog in general. Most facility dogs are service dog dropouts.
Right.
Most of the time, they had some sort of temperamental issue or learning issue or sometimes health issue, not usually health issue, that prevented them from graduating as a full service dog.
Right.
Then they are demoted to facility dog. A facility dog is there primarily to provide emotional comfort. Typically, there's not any true training requirements other than the requirements of a therapy dog. But like in the case of your dad's dogs at Lakeside, they have also had additional training because they were en route to become service dogs.
Yeah.
So some of them can do retrievals. Some of them can do give a hug. So it's all surrounding providing emotional comfort.
Yeah. In Lakeside, a main piece of what they do is they're an alternative school for a lot of kids that have gotten kicked out of the normal private school or public school systems, and they for a whole number of issues, but they have quite a few students. But then the facility dogs are handled by staff. Usually some of them are teachers, some of them are counselors or whatever, and then the dogs are used to kind of diffuse situations with like dog hugs, and the kids get to
help them to regulate their brains.
Yeah. So, and particularly on main campus, my dad's kind of made that into a like somatic wonderland.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Of walking paths and soothing things, and but then the dogs are there to kind of be an enhancer to that experience and help have a really.
They're really great to help recover from trauma and all these things. Wonderful.
But it's like just having an awesome dog.
It is.
In your school, basically.
Yeah. So it's a glorified therapy dog. It's the places that it's been invited to come in, and facility dogs do not have public access rights.
Right.
They do not. I remember talking to one of the handlers at Lakeside. She brought the dog to a restaurant. And kudos to this restaurant owner. The restaurant owner was like, "You're not allowed to have this dog here. That's a therapy dog. You're not allowed to." And he knew the rules, but then she was arguing back and forth because the organization who gave her this therapy dog, this facility dog, said, "Oh yeah, when it's in training, you're allowed to take it with you." That's not true. That's not the law.
Yeah, well, if you are going to do it, you can take it there are some places like Home Depot and Lowe's.
Right. Those are dog-friendly facilities. You're allowed, anybody can bring a pet dog, no training whatsoever needed, to go to Home Depot and those places.
So it's a cool training ground for those types of things.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but that's where I just want to make the distinction. Facility dogs do not have public access rights either.
Yep. And then my favorite type of dog is the
emotional support animal.
Because
an emotional support animal can be any breed. Any species, I should say. You could have an emotional support tarantula if you wanted.
Right.
The requirements for an emotional support animal is a prescription from your doctor or psychiatrist, which says that this animal provides emotional comfort to my patient.
Okay.
That is it.
Right.
That's
super broad.
It's so broad, and it's supposed to be, it's another therapeutic tool, right?
Yeah.
The emotional support animal has 0 public access rights, period.
Okay.
The only rights that you get by having an emotional support animal is you can bring it into housing situations that have breed or animal restrictions. So if you move to an apartment that says no dogs and you say, "Here's my prescription from my doctor, which says I require this animal for my mental health comfort." Yeah. They're legally required to let that animal live
or
in
like
the
a college dorm or something.
Or a college dorm.
Okay. So those would be like kind of practical. But I feel like people get the emotional support thing and they take it on planes with them.
Well, now I will say the qualification I was going to make is that there is this really, really stupid clause which allows emotional support animals on airplanes.
Oh.
That's legally true.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Well, because I actually know of some comedians that have gotten their dogs classified as emotional support animals so they could fly with them.
Yeah.
Now, hopefully they're well behaved and they're not abusing that privilege, but
and that's the idea. The idea was supposed to be have a really well behaved animal that helps to provide you comfort in the stressful situation of flying so that you can get through that situation effectively. And it provides you comfort along the way. The idea was not for someone to bring a 600-pound potbelly pig as their emotional support animal on this Delta flight or a peacock.
I've heard of both of those.
Right?
Yeah.
The peacock fiasco from a couple of months ago.
Yeah.
Now, because there is a qualification, airlines are required to allow emotional support animals on flights as long as the emotional support animal does not incur undue hardship to the flight.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I feel like a 600-pound pig might incur
Right.
some undue hardship.
Yes. And I guarantee you, okay, I can't guarantee you, but I would highly suspect that that person who had the 600-pound potbelly pig as an emotional support animal did not have a prescription from her doctor requiring that would be the case.
There would be, yeah, I would say that.
Can you imagine buying a vest for a 600-pound pig?
Yeah, that'd probably be a
Support animal.
custom order for sure. That's a
Yeah.
huge animal. It's super dangerous too. A 600-pound pig, man.
I know. Well, it was on a pallet, like a trolley. What do you call that? A wagon. That's the woman was pulling because it couldn't even walk. How are you going to get that on the plane in the first place?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, well, I don't know what her
And then
deal was.
the
But
emotional peacock thing, like people have taken it far outside of context. When the law definitely needs to have some revisions or qualifications thrown in there.
And that's what's going to happen with people abusing a lot of these things, is that they're going to come down on it hard, so that the requirements for public access are going to become much more stringent, because we can't have people have all these crazy pets and like in restaurants and stuff. It's like, it's like that type of animal should not be near my food. So it's like,
now, but let's talk about why.
and poorly trained, and plus, like, I've seen dogs get in fights.
Yep.
And it's
Oh,
no
yeah.
joke. And people walk around, I had a violent dog, and it's no joke, man.
Yeah.
I had a 70-pound Australian Shepherd, and that is he's a friggin' wolf.
He's a wolf. He was just a wolf.
So, and it's no joke.
Yep.
So, and it's like, in having experience with this, is a slight tangent, but
Yeah.
people walking around with these really powerful animals,
Yeah.
that's fine. You can have whatever dog breed you want. I am a huge
Yeah.
pro dog, love dogs. I will always have dogs. Big fan. I don't care if you get a Russian Ovcharka.
Yeah.
If you don't know what that is, you should look it up.
Yeah.
It's a 240-pound wolf
Bear.
that you could ride
Dog
if you
bear.
wanted to. They're Russian
Designed
guard.
to hunt bears.
They're Russian guard dogs. They're insane looking. This huge, like, looks like something from Star Wars.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna, I almost have a very similar view to dogs as I do on guns. I'm fine if you have them. However, if they're going to be super dangerous, you need to be really trained well in both.
Yeah.
So you need to know how to handle that dog, and you need to have that dog really well trained, because I think too often people don't acknowledge how dangerous some of these
Yeah.
bigger breeds are. And I mean, even
Oh, he's just a teddy bear.
yeah, but it's and like for me, I'm always kind of keeping my eye out. I know with
Yeah.
dogs that are not well trained, and people don't know how to handle them. You see somebody with a 120-pound German Shepherd,
Yeah.
and they're leaning back, and this thing they've got it on one of those zip leads. It's
Yeah.
just swinging around like crazy, like that.
Flexi lead.
That's a very dangerous situation.
It is.
So
And people just don't realize it.
and that's just my own
Mm-hmm.
experience with animals, and it's just if you're going to have like a pit bull or anything, I think they can make wonderful
Yeah.
pets, but you got to train that thing. You've got to train that
Yep.
dog, and you got to make
And
sure
know how to handle it.
temperament's good. You're going to handle it. If he's got some weird behaviors, a little aggressive, then you really need to be managing that behavior as
Mm-hmm. Right.
well,
And not
just
taking it into public places where
Correct.
that could escalate.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Gus has had, they call it, when you're training a service dog, public access training. You start with places that are completely 100% pet friendly. Parks, Home Depot,
Yeah.
Lowe's, those types of places. And you go and you get them used to the sounds and the smells and the sights of being in public. A lot of dogs that people take into public like this have never even been inside of a store before. They can't even walk because they've never been on the linoleum,
Right,
or whatever the
right.
flooring is. But before I go on, I wanted to make the note for you, for anybody listening too, emotional support animals require zero training.
Right.
Not even public access. I mean, not even the CGC, not even sit, not even stay, not even come to their name. They don't even have to know their name.
Well, it's because it could
no
be
training.
it could be an iguana. Like
Yeah.
you can't train that.
It could be a goldfish.
Right.
Any animal. That's what drives me crazy, because people think, oh, this emotional support animal is my therapy dog. And they think my therapy dog equals my service dog. This is especially confusing for the mental health field, because you have what's called a psychiatric assistance dog. So people who have things like traumatic brain injury
Yeah.
or epilepsy.
I was gonna say like seizures and stuff. Yeah.
Seizures,
Yeah.
PTSD, migraines, these types of things that dogs are specifically task trained to mitigate are called psychiatric support dogs, which I think is a bit misleading. So what they do is they say these people with emotional support animals, or even people who just are unaware, because sometimes people don't know. They just don't realize that they're breaking the law or doing something incorrectly because there's not enough information widely available.
Right.
So they think, this dog, I have anxiety. This dog calms me down and provides me with comfort. That's my service dog.
Yeah.
Right? Just by being with you. Legally, by law, if it's a normal thing that a dog just does because it's a dog sitting at your feet, laying there, being in the same room as you, does not count as a task that mitigates a disability. Now, to differentiate, so this is where a huge amount of this emotional support animals in public come from. It's because it's someone who has really bad anxiety or depression, and they say, this dog helps me, and they just drag it along with them, put it in a little bonnet, a little basket or whatever.
Yeah.
Because they don't realize that there's a difference. When you just have emotional comfort from a dog, that does not count as a service task. If, however, you have anxiety attacks, panic attacks, or dissociative episodes from severe depression or PTSD, and the dog is trained to break you out of the panic attack, to break you out of the dissociative episode, to give you something called deep pressure therapy, where the dog is specifically trained to lay on particular pressure points of your body, provide heat and stability to calm you down during a panic attack, and those are legal tasks. Those are things that the dog has been trained to do to mitigate your disability, your anxiety disorder. If you just are happy that Fluffy's with you and you feel better about that, doesn't count.
Right.
That's the difference between an emotional support animal for anxiety. I can't tell you how many people say that to me when they meet Gus. They're like, oh, I have anxiety. I need a service dog. And I say, okay, well, what would the dog do for you? What kind of tasks would he do to mitigate your disability? And they're like, oh, no, it'd just be nice to have him with me. I love my dog. I just want to have him with me. And I say, it's wonderful. Dogs are great. I love that dogs have the ability to warm our hearts in such this way, but that doesn't count as the ability to bring this dog with you everywhere you go.
Yeah. Well, do you want to touch on the question you get a lot is, you have Gus, he's a service dog. Do you want to touch on why we have him and all of that?
Yeah. I'll talk about that, but I want to go back again to finish the story I told about the Bed Bath & Beyond.
Oh, right.
So I want to go back to re-illustrate that now that we have a proper distinction. So her dogs were probably either pets or what she thought as emotional support animals, completely unvested. They didn't have anything that said support dog or anything like that, or ESA, emotional support animal. You see that a lot on people. ESA, access required by law, which is not true. People just sew that onto these vests because they buy these starter kits online and get scammed. And
yeah, well, just to touch on that too, the more people that abuse that, the more restrictions and rules are going to come down. So if anyone's doing that and you're bringing an untrained animal amongst the living, then it's going to have a negative impact, one, on the people that actually have fully trained service animals. And they're kind of diluting what that means because they're almost,
they are abusing the system.
They're abusing the system, and they're also putting people get fake service vests that they put on dogs, and they're like, oh, I've put that on, now my dog can fly with me. And it's like, I get why you would want to do that, but if you do that to a very an untrained dog that might have violent tendencies, you're just...
Even if it doesn't have violent tendencies, you're putting this dog in an extraordinarily high stress environment that it's never had any training to combat, to be able to regulate its own brain within. That was in, I guess, February. They had that one on the Delta flight where the service dog bit somebody and attacked the crap out of somebody. They had to land the flight or didn't take off. I don't remember the details, but I guarantee you that wasn't a service dog. 100%. I know that wasn't a service dog. And even if it was an emotional support dog, that's what also drives me crazy about that rule that you can take it on an airplane. I think that needs to be completely abolished. There is some legal changes that airlines themselves can take. And what they have done is you need to have a health record posted within 24 hours of your flight. Maybe it was 48 hours. You need to have a up-to-date, written within 1 month letter from your doctor, your prescribing medical team that it is an emotional support animal. And I believe Delta requires proof of training.
Okay.
Before they allow the animal on the plane.
Yeah.
And that is all brand new this year since that attack.
Yeah, and you'll see more like that just because people have taken way too much advantage of that.
Taken so much advantage.
So back to the Bed Bath & Beyond.
Yes, back to the Bed Bath & Beyond story. So this woman is playing bodyguard for her dogs in this shopping cart. So I went over and I talked to the manager team and I was like, I'm really sorry. I totally don't want to be rude here, but I want to let you know as a real service dog handler, someone who's passionate about this field, you have a legal right to ask her to leave if she's causing a disruptance in your store. You don't have to allow this to happen if you're afraid that she might sue you, because that's where 3 of the guys popped up.
Oh, yeah.
And they say, well, she'll sue us. We're not allowed to tell them. We're not allowed to ask about the dog. And I said, actually, I want to let you know, maybe to help you feel a little bit more empowered in this situation, you are allowed to ask 2 questions. Is that a service dog? And if she says no, you are legally allowed to ask her to leave.
Yeah.
And what tasks has this dog, now she has 2 dogs, has this dog been trained to do to mitigate your disability? And if she does not have an answer for you, you're allowed to ask her to leave. If she causes a fuss, she has no legal standing whatsoever.
Right.
None. Now, businesses, places of business are also allowed to make their own rules. They can say, we'll allow people to bring their dogs, right? They can say that. They have the ability to do so. And that's kind of what this guy said. He said, the manager, he was like, I'm really sorry. And he looked and he's like, obviously your dog is a real service dog, because he's just sitting perfectly. And the other thing is with service dogs, they don't go and sniff people. They don't sniff things. They just sit with you. They're there as your medical equipment, right?
Yep.
So Gus didn't go to greet him or whatever. We call that a wandering nose.
Yeah.
It's like sniffing all the stuff. And in a grocery store, we can walk past the meat aisle and he stays focused on me. He doesn't even sniff the meat. You know what I mean? And he eats a raw meat diet.
Yeah.
That's a service dog. Anything below that behavior is not a service dog, or it's in training.
Right.
And if it's in training, you still have the right to say, in Pennsylvania, if a service dog in training does not have public access rights.
Interesting.
Unless it's part of an organization.
Yeah. But and most of the people are pretty cool with letting you train because you're doing it for real.
As long as they're well behaved, right? If they're not pooping inside the house, then the building, that's what they're really concerned with. But anyway, it turned out that then they asked this woman to leave and she was kind of flustered and upset, but then she just got out of there and she could see me and she was just like, as she's exiting the building, I'm standing in line buying a spatula or whatever I was buying.
Yeah.
And she's like, don't let him see my dogs. Don't let him see my dogs. As if Gus was the problem.
Yeah.
No. So, but it was nice. I got to open their eyes and say, hey, here are the laws, because so many places of operation don't know what they're allowed to do. And that's where I want to go and be an advocate for them. If you see a dog that's completely misbehaving and going nuts, you absolutely have every legal right to ask them to leave.
Yeah.
Even a service dog, well-behaved, 100% trained, real legit service dog, if that dog is misbehaving and the handler can't control the dog, you have every right to ask them to leave.
Right.
Because they're disrupting the place of business.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yep.
That's good to know.
So that's what I tell them. So if you see me and Gus in here and Gus is peeing on something, you ask me to leave.
Yeah.
Not that he would, but giving them the power to know that that's okay.
When I feel like a lot of, coming from someone that owns a business, I don't have a brick and mortar location, but I would feel their pain and be like, man, I don't even want to touch this thing. But then it's being disruptive to your other paying customers or clients or, an airline, all that stuff. And be like, man, we're going to have to work on some policies for this. So
Yeah. In the service dog community, there is a phrase, it's not a legal requirement, but we all say 4 on the floor.
Yeah.
4 paws on the floor. Dogs should not be ever riding in a shopping cart.
Riding a shopping cart and like a papoose or like one of those baby carrier things.
Well, you can actually have one in a baby carrier. That's the only other one. So baby carrier is allowed in a shopping cart, not allowed ever.
Yeah.
Even with diabetic alert dogs.
One of my favorite pictures was they made a rule on the New York subway that you have to if you brought a dog on there, he'd have to be in like a bag. And then this dude had a husky and he had this enormous bag.
Yes, big giant backpack or something.
There's a huge backpack. This like 70-pound dog just like hanging in there. Oh, it's hilarious. But so back to kind of Gus and
wait, no,
sorry,
you I was saying something. 4 on the floor.
Yeah.
So you can have a dog in a carrier, like a baby carrier almost. Usually if you see a tiny dog, I don't want to say exclusively, but it is common to have a smaller breed dog be a diabetic alert dog because they don't need to provide mobility assistance to people.
Right. So you might as well have a
let's talk a little bit about types of service dogs. So first, going back to this, you can see someone carrying a dog in a baby carrier. That's totally fine, like a sling on your chest. Because diabetic alert dogs smell glucose on your breath. So they want the dog to be close to their mouth to smell them and tell them whether they're too high or too low on their glucose and whether they need sugar or insulin or whatever. So that is super common, relatively common, and totally legal. But sitting them in the shopping cart, no thank you, not at all allowed.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So then we have other types of service dogs. We talked about the diabetic alert dog. We talked about psychiatric alert dogs or support dogs. And then you have mobility. Mobility is another one that is often misunderstood because you might look at someone and say, well, you look totally normal. Why do you need a service dog? That's actually common with all of these categories so far, because if you look at someone, you look at me, no one ever, actually everyone always says, why do you need a service dog? What's wrong with you? Why do you need a service dog? They're always shocked when I tell them that he's mine,
Right.
and I'm not training him for someone else.
Right.
Yeah. So, hey, not all disabilities are visible. That's what I have to say. That's what's super common in the service dog world. It's clear if you're blind.
Yeah.
And you need a guide dog, fairly clear that, oh, that's what the dog is for. Or if you have a mobility dog where you've got a harness and a brace and you're walking with the dog, or even sometimes mobility dogs, you're in a wheelchair, you've trained them to go get stuff off the shelf and put it into your cart, your shopping cart, so that you can then continue on with your day. You know, those are all legit service dogs. I'm sorry, I totally lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere.
Well, you're talking about how a lot of them are invisible as far as like.
Yeah, and you just don't know what's going on in people's bodies. So
Yeah.
there are cardiac alert dogs too, where they alert to heart rate changes and blood pressure changes, and that happens with people who have something called syncope, which is basically a fancy term for passing out. You can't regulate your blood flow, or something called POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, where your autonomic nervous system is malfunctioning and you can't regulate blood flow properly. So sometimes you might stand up and walk around and be totally fine, but then other times your blood cannot pass through your blood vessels effectively, and blood pools at the bottom of your body, like the lower extremities, and you pass out.
Right.
You look normal.
Yeah.
You look totally normal.
Yeah.
Right?
Hmm?
So why do I have a service dog? I know that's what you've been waiting for.
Well, we got to get to it at some point. Yeah.
Yes, we will get there. So I think we kind of covered a lot of really good information about what a service dog is and what they look like. There is, like I said, no breed or size requirement other than it needs to be of the right size to serve your needs. So like Gus is 30 pounds. He's little. I don't need a mobility assist dog. Mobility assistance dogs must be a minimum of 50% of your body weight.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes. And 40% of your height.
Yeah, because they're usually higher up so that they can have that handle rig on there for stability.
Yes.
Yeah, so you got to have a dog that is taller at the shoulder than probably what Gus is. So.
Yep, absolutely. So he would not qualify as a service dog for me. I mean, as a mobility dog, not that I need it, because he's too small for the picture. If I needed a mobility assistance dog, I'd have to get one that was at least maybe like 50, 60 pounds.
Yeah. Yep.
60 pounds to be half my weight so that he could hold on to, help me to stabilize or whatever. You can also have something called counterbalance. That's another task where the dog almost acts like an anchor. You might be a little bit unstable, so you don't need to press down and have downward mobility support on the dog. But if you lean over, you grab a pull handle and the dog will stabilize you so you don't fall over.
Right.
Right? That's a super common task for a lot of these bigger dogs. That's why golden retrievers are so popular and labs are so popular, because they're great temperament, very smart, and decently sized.
Right.
So service dogs, like I said, can do all kinds of things. And I know we're talking about why do I need a service dog, and I'm going to say this right up front for y'all, right in the middle,
Yeah.
that I'm not going to disclose exact details, specific details in a public forum like this about my disability that Gus helps me with, but I will describe some of the tasks that he helps me with.
Right.
Which I think is a fair compromise.
Yeah.
So, and I do want to tell a story really quickly before I get into those tasks. I was at shopping a couple of weeks ago at Whole Foods, and this wonderful lady, I don't know her name, came and was talking to me, and she just starts talking. Says, when you have a dog with you, a service dog, people just start talking. This is one of my biggest pet peeves. So pro tip, if you ever see anyone in public with a service dog, totally ignore the dog. Introduce yourself to the handler.
The human.
Look at the human, say hello, and then if you want to ask questions about the dog, do that. Introduce yourself. Make the handler feel like a human. My biggest pet peeve is that people completely dehumanize me. They don't care about me at all. They just start talking, telling me their whole life story, showing me pictures of all their dead dogs on their phone, because they just think, wow, here's a common point of interest. But say hello to me. Just be kind.
Yeah. Well, I would also say to the service dog handlers as well, which you have.
Most handlers are kind.
You're doing a nice job, particularly now with how you're handling Gus and in public, and because from a person that obviously I don't have a service dog. I mean, Gus is kind of our family dog, but which I want to come back to that too. But if you're taking an animal that most people actually have dogs,
Yeah.
so they have an immediate point of contact. I have had puppies, which I've walked in public and PetSmart and all those places. You garner a lot of attention, even in places where people are expecting to see animals.
Especially when they're so cute.
When they're so adorable, which most of the dogs I've had have been super cute. So, and then Gus is cartoonishly cute. So you can't expect on both sides, you know, we want the people that are coming up to the people that have service dogs to be very polite, treat them as humans, not just tell them the life story about their dogs. But people have an immediate, it seems like babies and dogs, people will approach you and be like, hey,
And start talking and start touching.
and then the magnified version of that is puppies. If you have a puppy, people will just bend down and pick it up. That's happened to me so many times, which I totally get. You're walking around with something that everyone is used to seeing. They're like, oh, you have a dog, I have a dog, I'd love to talk to you about your dog. But having grace on both sides, and for the handlers of the service animals not to be, for lack of a better term, shitty.
Yeah.
Shitty.
It is hard, I'm going to say, because now that I've had Gus and I had another service dog before Gus, it is hard sometimes when you answer the 45th question and you went into the store for one item and you are there for 4 hours because people keep talking to you. And you, anybody who knows me, you know, I'll talk with you. If I have time, I'm super happy. I love educating people about service dogs and informing them and showing them that not all disabilities are visible. And just because I look fine, I'm a cute little blonde chick, does not mean that I have everything functioning perfectly. Right? So most service dog handlers are kind. Most understand, and I have a lot of grace. And that's why I talked to this lady. I'm going to tell you the story. I talked to her for 20 minutes standing at the front door of Whole Foods. I didn't even make it past that first produce cooler. Right? Because they don't know. It's new. People don't understand. There's so much false and wrong and misinformation about service dogs out there that they don't know. So I like to educate people. I want to show them and tell them and teach them that there are, you know, polite procedures and so forth. So definitely don't touch the dog. If you see a service dog in public, do not tell your child, go pet the dog. That has happened to me numerous times. Oh, look, doggy, go pet the doggy. Go say hi to the doggy. No. Any dog you meet in public, regardless of whether it's public, like public access or like in your neighborhood, don't just approach the dog. You don't know that dog. A dog is a dog. It could bite your face off. You have no idea that dog's history. You have no clue.
And I mean, I see a lot of bad dog etiquette. I'm in a lot of people's homes from my experience with contracting, and I have a very strict protocol that I adhere to when I'm meeting new animals. And it's something that Josh and I are going to put in our educational course that we're working on for contractors, because just people in general, and I'm being broad here, but I see a lot of improper dog etiquette when greeting an animal. A lot of people will like hover over the dog, have their hands come like from the top down into the dog's vision.
Staring right in their eyeballs.
They're staring into their eyes. They're leaning over. Most of the time, you're going to be way bigger than the dog that you're petting. Even if you have a 50-pound dog, most humans are north of like 120 pounds. So like that's a big creature coming into this dog space. If the dog doesn't know you, if it doesn't have a generally pleasant temperament, some dogs are okay with whatever. I mean, that's every dog that I've had. I train them to be okay with me doing whatever to them.
Picking them up, messing with their food,
messing with
while
their
they're
face,
eating it,
doing all. But like, I can't guarantee that all of the other dogs in the world have been trained the same way mine have. And most haven't. So like, you know, just for a quick example of dog etiquette, when I go into a new house, I greet the homeowner. I don't make eye contact with the dog.
Ignore the dog.
And the dog will come up. A lot of times they're not well behaved and they'll sniff me and go crazy. And then once the dog settles, then I will drop to my haunches, but not directly in front of the dog. I'll present my side to them.
Profile.
I'll let the dog approach me. I don't do any cooing or anything. I'll let it sniff wherever it wants to sniff, let it sniff my hand, and then I'll kind of graduate to petting it. And I will say most of the time by the end of the job, that dog is following me around the house. So that happens all the time because they're just like, I like this guy. This guy's cool. He's not messing with me. Like but what I
understand your dog etiquette, man.
What I don't do is try and ramp the dog up, be like, who's a good boy? And then start screwing with it. Like I do that to my own dogs, but that's I can do whatever I want. So
Yeah.
And people
right.
like,
And you know them and they know you, and it's totally different. It's not, if you're randomly meeting a dog in public somewhere, like I said, public as in like at the grocery store with a service dog, hopefully a real legit service dog, or walking around your neighborhood, it is just not wise to go up to an animal that you don't know. But I understand the allure. I understand that it's, wow, cute, fluffy little puppy, but you just don't know. It's just very, unwise to do that, to behave in that manner. And I say, like, this woman, she just started talking to me in the grocery store, going on and on and on. She didn't even look at me. She's staring at Gus. She's trying to pet him 5 times in this conversation. Man, please don't touch him. He's working. Please don't distract him. He's working. So the general rule of thumb, guys, if you're listening, or when you're listening, is no talk, no touch, no eye contact. I have a neon yellow sign stuck on Gus, which says no talk, no touch, no eye contact. And I can't tell you how many people don't read that. I can tell you on one hand how many people have read it. 2. Maybe 3.
Yeah. And I think they are educating. I know kids are having assemblies and stuff.
Kids are doing more with it.
So.
I remember one time, this was a great story. I remember one time a cute little tiny blonde girl was like, the mom was like, oh my gosh, go look at this dog. Go pet the dog. Go say hi to the dog. And she pulls on the mom's sleeve and she's like, no, Mom, he's working. You can't pet him while he's working. And she was like 5 or something, so tiny. And I was like, yes, you're right. And the mom was like, what? She goes, yeah, that's a service dog. We learned about them in school. So they are doing a better job of having awareness about it. But that's why I'm, saying the reason for that is to not distract the dog from his job.
Right.
You have no idea what that dog, if that dog is in public, if it's a real service dog, right? It's not an emotional support dog or somebody just being stupid.
Right.
Or inconsiderate. It is there for a very specific reason. Someone has a disability. That dog is that person's lifeline, essentially.
Yeah.
Right? And there are so many stories about how someone was fussing with a dog and then someone has a seizure and has a concussion and has to go to the hospital because that dog was distracted and unable to do his job. It's still a dog. He's not a robot, like I said.
Right. I mean, and if you would frame it in the sense of like, you would never distract, unless you're a huge dick, distract like a seeing eye dog.
Yeah.
And like, oh, now that dog just pulled his owner into traffic and got hit. Like that's...
You'd never stick sticks in the spokes of someone's wheelchair.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, unless you're also a dick. Or that guy in the wheelchair is being outlandish.
Even then, I would
But
never.
I'm just saying, like, treat it like a seeing eye dog. Like you...
But even then, like, your uncle was so proud to tell me that I petted the guy on the bus. I petted the dog because he's blind. What's he going to do? He can't see me.
Yes.
I was so pissed at him.
Yeah, it's not I know, I've seen you get riled up a couple times. But again, that's you... I think it's important to point out that if you distract a dog like that, and this an extreme case would be a seeing eye dog, is that could cause that person to fall, get really hurt, get killed.
Yeah, like, not even just a seeing eye dog, though. Not even...
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, that's an extreme example, like where people understand that you don't mess with a seeing eye dog.
Right.
And the service dogs are on that same level.
Exactly.
But you cannot, it's not as visible. That's a bad term. But like, as someone who is blind, that's a really obvious one where if you have someone who's, a diabetic alert dog or is doing something for epilepsy, they also need to not be distracted. So they're focused on their handler. I think that's the point you're trying to make. That's all I was saying with
you're right.
the blind version of that. One of the other things I just wanted to point out and clarify, and I've heard you had an experience like this a bunch of times where people feel bad for Gus because he is true. So I just wanted to talk about my perspective from you having a service animal.
Sure. That's great.
Because that is some people don't think that he's treated well or like as a pet or something, or that he's suffering and is like,
I drag him around everywhere and I force him to work
and he can't have any fun.
He never gets to have fun.
So let me just like paint a little picture here. The Vassar clan, we are very dog oriented. It's like a dog wonderland over here. So the apartment that Serina and I live in is it's a larger space that I renovated, and it is attached to my childhood home, which is where my parents now live still. And they have Gabby, which is a 40-pound Australian Shepherd female. And then my brother has 2 Australian Shepherds, Henry and Drake, which are both males, much larger Australian Shepherds. So we have dogs over here a lot.
All the time.
There's a
Dog-friendly.
There's a big yard in the back, which is mainly dirt now, covered in hay, because the dogs have just torched it all. So when Gus Gus, he gets to go out with Serina all over the place.
He loves his job.
And he loves, like, a dog doesn't just want to sit at home all the time. If it had the option to go with you, it would much rather be going with you somewhere.
Dogs love doing jobs. Gus has a purpose. And whenever I pick up his leash, he starts wagging his tail and he runs to the front door. He knows we're going on an adventure.
And I'm very used to having working dogs, like the breed of a working dog. Which they're much better as our humans when they have something to do. Give them a task, and a lot of
their energy.
A lot of the anxiety issues that dogs have and aggression and things stem from them being bred to do one thing and then being forced to do another. Yeah. Much like humans. Intended for one thing, forced to do something they hate. Yeah. So Gus gets to come home, and when he's here, he's not on duty.
Yeah. He just gets to be a dog.
He loves me. I get to walk with him. Yeah, I usually walk him like 5 nights a week. Yep. We go on a nice big loop, usually at night. He is so pumped to go for his walk. And then he gets to come home, and we play with him out back. Like, he gets to run like crazy. We have gotten him in such good shape because he runs with the Aussies. They're like, he chases down these tennis balls, and he's just like so pumped. He's friends with all of them. Like, Henry and him have had some words, but
they just like to fuss with each other.
But it's fine.
They're 6 months apart.
They're both young males. It's a thing. But yeah, he gets like the best. He has a really sweet setup here. He gets to hang out with either Serina or me or both, like, all the time. Yeah. And then, like, one of my favorite things we do is we wake up in the morning. I come out, I let him out of his crate, and then he jumps up on the bed with us
and just cuddles
and just like hangs out, and then like it's the best.
Yeah. So it is. Now, but go back. You were trying to paint a picture of his day with me.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, he gets to go. A lot of times you're hanging around here doing your vlog thing, and he's featured prominently in that. Yeah. And then when he gets to go to your office, he's hanging out with you again. He gets to meet all these new people, and he's also become like a favorite amongst your clients. Yeah. And then it's not like you're like, never touch. A lot of times.
No, in my office, I will qualify this because I know a lot of you listening, you're like, what? No talk, no touch, no eye contact. I never knew that. I pet him every time I come in your office. In my office specifically, I do relax the rules a little bit because he can very easily focus. Just like you and me being here at home, he can focus on his job. With one other person in the room. It's when you get into public and we've got sounds and smells and hundreds of people or 20, tens of people, whatever, scores of people around, he needs to be able to focus on me. So if anybody who sees me in public, who is in my office, who's a client of mine, sees us in public, they know, don't talk to Gus. My office is a bit of an anomaly where it's almost like he's off duty.
Right.
Where he knows so service dogs are technically never off duty because when they are trained, when they're really well trained, they love their job. They love it. It is a super fun game that they want to win. So even if Gus is running off in the yard playing and something goes wrong, and we'll talk about some of the tasks he does, he'll come over and alert me, even if he's playing in the yard, because he knows that's the game and he just won that game and he's going to get treats, and pets and love and all that stuff. So technically never off duty, but very much have a lot of freedom. They don't have to be like rigid. They're not robots.
Yeah. And it's on the handler, which is you in this case, to kind of dictate the rules of when and where and all that thing. And also Gus, for those that are curious, that may not have seen him in some of our thumbnails, Gus is a Lagota Romagnola. Romagnolo, and it's a lake dog of Italy. Yeah. And he's about 30 pounds. And
curly coat.
I will say that at first I felt like a giant because I'm used to larger animals, but I've really enjoyed actually having a smaller dog. Yeah. And we've developed a decent relationship with Jackie, his breeder. Yeah. And I think for our next animal, which will be mine, I'm definitely going to go get another Lagotto. Are great. I'm a big fan of his temperament. He's this highly intelligent, goofy little clown, and I enjoy his furry little spirit. So, but the point I'm just trying to make overall is he has an amazing dog life. Like, this dude is enjoying the shit out of his time on this planet and does not suffer. Serina feeds him raw, so he's eating like an absolute champ. Because you're a nutritional therapist, so you've kind of and you're dialing that in continuously as you see like the feedback he's given you. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out, and I think we should, as we're getting close to wrapping up here, at least talk about the tasks that he does for you.
Let me just I want to jump in on what you were talking about with people and interacting real quick. I want to finish my story from Whole Foods.
Okay.
So this woman is talking to me and she just goes, she doesn't even look at me. She just starts talking about Gus and talking to me at Gus. You know what I mean? And she's reaching down and trying to pet him. And I'm like, I'm sorry, ma'am, please don't interact with him. He's working. He needs to do his job. And then she says, oh, what do you mean? And then I opened my mouth to try to answer her and she just cut me off, and then she showed me pictures of her dead dog. And I mean, this happens all the time. I know I've said that and I joke about it, but it literally happens all the time. I was having a conversation with my friend, walking in the store, making eye contact with my friend, and someone yelled at me from across 4 aisles and screamed, "What kind of dog is that?"
Yeah.
And then I just kept walking. If you're going to scream at me like that, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm really sorry. You have to be polite. You need to, if you said, "Excuse me, ma'am, what kind of dog is that?" You came up, tapped me on the shoulder. "Hi, my name's Jill. May I ask you what type of dog that is? I'm happy to talk to you all day." If you're going to scream at me like I am nothing, no thank you. Totally disrespectful. I kept walking because I'm like, I'm in the middle of a conversation. You can perfectly well see that I'm in the middle of a conversation. I'm going to keep walking. And so I kind of like, you flick your eyes over and you're like, what? And then what just happened? And me and my friend kept walking. And then the woman screamed after me, "I know you heard me. What kind of dog is that?" And I just kept walking. Like, that is a violent situation right there.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go engage with that. So you don't know. And what if I was deaf? You know what I mean? I know you heard me. What if I was deaf? What if I didn't hear you? They have hearing alert dogs. That's a real thing.
Yeah, I guess.
So anyway, when you interact with somebody, if you want to go, the service dog handler kind of gets to dictate. If a lot of times, if you're polite to me and you're engaging with me like I'm a person, I'm totally happy to answer any questions you have. Even if I'm on a tight schedule, I will answer your questions and spend time with you. Oftentimes, I'll let you pet Gus. No problem at all. If you're polite and you ask me and you're not screaming at me from across the room, I'm super happy to do that. But sometimes I might say, "No, thank you. I'm sorry. He's working now. Maybe next time we'll have some pet sessions," right? That happened. Another story with me. I was at my office and some lady was just really, really upset. And this is what I was going to illustrate. "Gus, you're slavery. You're making him work. You're forcing him to work. He's obviously terrified of people. He's backing away from me when I'm trying to pet him." And I said, "Well, I asked you not to pet him. He knows when he's working, he's not supposed to interact with people. He knows to turn his head the other way. If people call his name, he knows, look at Serina," right? It's not like, look at the person who called his name. His name is his name, but it also means look at Serina.
Right.
So it's not at all like that. It's really service dogs have wonderful lives. They are spoiled. I know people say to me all the time, "Oh, if I had him at home, he'd be the most spoiled dog ever," as if I don't spoil him and I don't take care of him.
Yeah, like he's working the salt mine somewhere.
Yeah, and you know what? The only time that happens is when they know he's my service dog.
Yeah.
If they think I'm training him, they treat me differently. That's this lady at Whole Foods was going on and on and on. And I think it's just so wonderful that you're training him, and it's going to be so hard when you have to give him up to whoever gets to keep him. And I said, "Well, actually, ma'am, he's my service dog. I get to keep him." And she stops and she turns white and she goes, "I'm so sorry," and walks away. That's what happened every time. This has happened so many times. "I'm so sorry," and she walks away, like about face completely. You're like, "No, but I'm still a human. I'm still me. I was the same person you were just talking to 5 seconds ago."
See ya.
So some things that Gus does for me. He is classified technically as a medical alert dog, so that's a very broad category. But some things that he does really, really well are heart rate alert and migraine alert. He is spot on for these types of things. So I get an unusual form of a migraine called hemiplegic migraine, which I know you're familiar with because you hear me deal with it. Yep. They basically mimic having a stroke.
Yeah.
So when these migraines come over me, I get usually about a 30-minute warning with an aura. So I start seeing little spots and dots and fuzzy weird things. And then once my vision returns to normal, it's like a freight train driving through my head and I lose a lot of capacity, not complete, function of my right side of my body. So Gus alerts before that happens.
Yeah. And a lot of times you have disruption in your heart rate, which is what he
locks in on.
Yeah,
and he's super good at that. I wear this little watch thing, my Apple Watch, and it tells you your heart rate. I used to wear the Fitbit. You can set alarms on the watch to tell you when your heart rate changes drastically, but not beforehand, right? So if you're staying seated and it says, and you're at 130, when a minute ago you were at 65, it will ring for you. It'll buzz at you. And it's supposed to detect things like heart attacks. But Gus is always better than the watch.
Yeah.
He comes over and he lets me know before that happens. So I can sit down, I can take some deep breaths, I can do whatever I need to do to regulate my heart rate. Or if my heart rate drops drastically, he lets me know as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes and I love it because my clients don't know this is happening. He comes over and he just stares at me and he sits down and he stares hard at me. That's his first clue. Because we wanted it to be subtle. I don't want people to freak out in my office. It's another reason why I don't disclose all of my details, because I've had it in the past where I've disclosed some information about my medical history and service dog stuff, and then people have been extremely mean and cutting and like, well, if you have all these problems, how can you help anybody else?
Right.
How can you be a health professional if you've got problems of your own? Well, I'm still human. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
you can find someone else who's perfect.
Yes.
Good luck with that.
Some robot cyborg that you have. Yeah.
Hey, holistic health. Service dog is way better than being on 18 different medications. I used to be on 18 different medications.
Yeah. Well, that argument holds no water.
No water.
Because I've been to doctors and I've been in better shape than most of the doctors I've seen. So yeah.
So I'm just a little more cautious about these types of things.
Yeah, no, I got
now.
you.
So he does heart rate alerts really well. He does sometimes when I have migraine things going on, I don't have good peripheral vision. So he alerts when people are in my space.
Yeah.
If I don't see or bump into them, you know what I mean? So I won't crash into people. So he does quite a lot to help me out in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, he's a good little dude.
Yeah.
Big fan.
Yeah.
Looking forward to getting another one.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. He does a lot. He's pretty awesome. It's so much fun to have Gus with me to help me with these things, because before that, you kind of I didn't go a lot of places without people with me, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know whenever something's going to happen, and you might take all the best, preventative medications or whatever. I was off medications for a while.
Yeah.
But it's great to have a little partner in crime who can help you out so you don't have to.
Well, even mentally, just that tether where if something does happen, you're not going to be left high and dry, and you've got partner in crime. You've got your little compadre there to help you out, and even having that mental, kind of piece of it, it just gives you another level of stability, keeping you calm, so that it's even less likely that you have a migraine or anything like that. Or
an event,
so,
right?
Yeah.
So, and that's where even what I was mentioning, I was getting at in my office. Sometimes Gus will just come and sit down and look at me. He rests his chin on my knee, and I know, okay, I better sit down or I better do some more deep breathing because my heart rate's going crazy here. It's just going to do whatever it wants to do, and it's so nice because it just looks like I'm petting my dog, right?
Yeah.
You don't know you don't know. You never know when you see a service dog. I try to keep it subtle because I don't want my clients to worry. I don't want them to think, oh man, is Serina going to pass out on me here?
Right. Yeah.
So it's nice. It's super nice.
So, well, I've been super happy to have him
wonderful
amongst us, and he's an absolute champ of a pet too. So, and I get the benefits of that without, I've had to be the caretaker for quite a few animals, and it's nice having someone else kind of head up that department. And I do what I can. I always bathe him, and then at least the reason I bathe him is as consistently as we do.
Yeah.
One, he doesn't shed, and he's hypoallergenic and all of that jazz, which I thought I was like sweet, like low maintenance, but he's like a little Swiffer. He picks up so much
all the dust.
So when I bathe him, he's like a nice tan color, and by the end of the bath, he's white.
Yes.
But I also feel like you're bringing him into public. He's in your office, and if I can help have him be a very clean, pleasant smelling animal, it's even less disruptive to people, and that's not you don't want him drawing that attention because he smells like ass or something.
Right.
So,
right, exactly. And that is for sure.
Which after this episode's done, I will be giving him a bath.
Yeah,
so.
it's nice.
Anything else you want to touch on, sweetie?
I just think service dogs are really cool. You can do so much and help so many people. If you think that you might want a service dog, this is what I did want to offer some resources. If you think, if you're listening and you say, wow, I've got a disability that a trained dog might be able to help me with, you can talk to me. I'm super happy to answer questions and see if it might be a good fit. You can talk to your doctor or your medical team and see if they have any resources for you, because we didn't talk about this, but there's two primary ways of getting a service dog. One, through an organization, such as Paws for People or the Seeing Eye, or two, something called owner training. Those are the two primary sources. Owner training is where someone can train their own dog to be a service dog. Now, you have to do the same type of thing. Temperament testing, rigorous training, hours and hours. Only you're the trainer instead of working with a professional trainer. What we did for this time around is we did a combination. I worked with a professional trainer for the base of his training, and then I finished the rest of his training. So that's another option that's viable too. That's usually cheaper than going through an organization, and it's a lot less time consuming. You kind of like get a kickstart for yourself if you start with an 8-week-old puppy rather than getting a dog at a year and a half with the base training already done. So I just get to do the polishing and all of that.
Right.
And I have a lot of experience with dog training, so that was not a hard sell for me to go with that route.
Yeah. And I would anticipate that in the future, I would imagine we'll probably be training some service dogs for people that aren't you. So.
Yeah, that's one of my dreams, is to be able to have a facility where I can do some of the training or do an owner training program to help people to train their own dogs as a service dog. Because like I said, there's a lot of people who can do the training themselves. You know, someone who's completely paralyzed in a wheelchair and you can't really do anything with, you may not be able to.
Right.
But if you have mobility, even if you have limited mobility, you can really do a lot of work for yourself. It's a lot of work. It's going to be a 2-year commitment. Period. The dog may wash out. Gus is not our first attempt with a Lagotto. We had a couple of others that just washed out. They didn't qualify as service dogs. You have to be prepared for that. So it's a lot of work. It's a huge amount of effort and money and time and energy that goes into it. But you can come out on the other end with something so valuable and so wonderful and giving you freedom back. That's really what it was. Before I had Gus, as a part of our working team, I did not have nearly as much freedom as I have now.
Yeah.
You know that. You saw the transformation that it has been in my life.
It's been the biggest shift I've seen, is that it's opened up quite a few opportunities for you, and just giving you more options, like
independence and freedom.
Independence is a good word.
Yeah.
A tremendous amount of independence, and you have it. Actually, it gives me a nice layer of. It's like we have a team now, and it's like it's like, all right, buddy, you're tagging you in, you're good,
right?
And then it's like a little, you have like this little furry monster that goes with you, who's like your pal, and it's like it's sweet because I feel like we're, he's like your backup, so it's good, and I like it too with, your clients. I think that most of them really enjoy it. And
the side benefit that I was not anticipating was that my clients get Gus is like half therapy dog in my office.
Oh yeah.
He's service dog for me, but most of his job when he's at my office really is lying around and waiting if there's any sort of event. I call that an event for myself. And most of the time he just gets to chill. He does not have, it's not, a lot of service dogs are like that too. It's sometimes people think that they have to be on and working all the time to be a service dog. No, they're supposed to be there as backup. People aren't having seizures 24/7. So they're there in the event of emergency to respond or alert or take care of their handler in some way. So I think it's been a really cool experience all the way around. And I love that term of independence. That's where a lot of people who are disabled are dependent. Right? They need help from a lot of other people. And I remember sometimes like having people, hey, can you come to the grocery store with me? I just need to make sure I've got another person with me to kind of be backup. I used to have to do that all the time.
Right.
And now I can go, I don't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
Just grab Gus. Hey, let's go. Let's get ready. He jumps up in the car with me and I'm off. And I don't even have to be babysat anymore.
It's pretty sweet because I don't have to do a lot of the errands now, which is sweet. So
it's so much better.
Just from
so much more freedom.
A marital standpoint, it's nice having, you being able to be independent and go places and do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
And so, but sweet.
It's great.
So,
service dogs are awesome.
Yeah.
I think that's how
they're pretty sweet. The process can be an absolute pain in the ass.
It really can. It's
and
very
difficult. It was like
so challenging.
It was a multiple year experience for Serena and I. We had another dog, Remy, through another organization that.
Yeah, he was all right. He was the smartest dog I've ever worked with.
Yeah, he was, but he had
the emotional capacity of a teaspoon.
Yeah, he had no soul. So just.
Yeah, Remy was great. We'll talk about him for a moment because if anybody follows me on Instagram, they see a lot of pictures of Remy. I still have some of our old training videos up there.
Yeah.
Brilliant dog. But he had, there's 2 different types of training. Do we have time, Jeremy? What's our time? Can I chat about this for a moment?
We're at like a minute or an hour 16. So
okay.
we can probably,
2 more minutes. I'll talk a couple more minutes.
Bring it on home.
Yes. So there's 2 major schools of thought for service dog training. And one of them is active handler, inactive dog, where the handler is telling the dog all of the commands. Do this, do that, sit down, stay, come, get, go do, check. A lot of times you say check, so the dog will check your blood sugar, right? They'll smell your breath or whatever.
Yep.
And you're telling the dog what to do. The other school of thought is inactive handler, active dog, where the handler doesn't have to do very much, but the dog is constantly creatively learning about the environment and trying to discover the game and win the game.
Yeah.
So Remy was the first category. I told him everything. He was brilliant. I taught him 50 commands in 3 months, and he could go, I could say, get the toothpick. I'd have a toothpick, a quarter, a dime, leash, his vest, keys, whatever, on a pile in the ground. And I say, bring me the toothpick. And he would get me the toothpick every single time. Brilliant. But he would never do anything without being told.
Yeah.
And the nature of certain disabilities, such as my own issues that I have, you don't know. It's unpredictable. I can't tell him, hey, check every 5 seconds. Is my heart rate going to spike? Is my heart rate going to drop?
Yeah.
You want them to be intelligently interacting with this material on their own. So that's where after several months with Remy, it was like, I don't think this is going to fit very well. So he got repaired with somebody else. It's totally fine. I'm sure he's doing a rock star job. I did a great job training him.
Yeah, you did.
That was through an owner training program. So I did virtually all of his training. And then with Gus, he's awesome because he will come and he'll be, in the other room, and he'll come over to me because he knows, he smells, he's a truffle dog, truffle hunter. So he sniffs these things out, and he's really, really good at his job. So anyway, that's kind of my last little 2 cents. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. It's a big process for sure, but once you hit it and you get it right,
Yeah.
totally worth it.
Persevere through it and,
Yeah.
kind of get to the other side, which is something was very impressive. Your resilience through the process.
I knew it. I knew that when we got to the other side, it was going to be better. I had tried all kinds of other stuff, man.
And then I think through this experience, if we're doing it, I learned a tremendous amount about picking the temperament and all of these things. And it's things that I think we should probably do another episode on. Mm-hmm. Probably when we do a puppy picking episode, it'll be where I'm picking my next dog, which will be
so
super fun. So... But
well, thanks, Jeremy.
Well, thanks for sharing, sweetie. Yeah. I know that's something you get asked a lot. I thought that was definitely a good episode to flesh that out and give you some time to go over that.
I think it was pretty fun.
So awesome. All right, guys, we'll be seeing you in the outro. All righty, there you go, folks. Thank you very much for listening. That was episode 20 of The Painter and the Pixie.
Yeah, episode 20 already.
It's something Serena's super passionate about, talking about Gus and service dogs. Yep. / animals.
Yeah, hey, they matter.
I'm still waiting to see one of those service horses. I obviously wouldn't go talk to the person and disturb them.
And if you do, hi, my name's Jeremy.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you'd be
How
less
are you
likely
today?
to stare into the eyes of the horse too.
Yeah, maybe.
But I don't know. I've never seen it.
Never seen one in real life either.
So, anyway.
Possible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you enjoyed the show, forgot what we were doing for a second.
Yeah.
Like, are we back in the podcast?
No, we're not.
It's the outro. Got it. Yeah. If you enjoyed the show, we would super appreciate you guys passing it around to your friends or anyone you think would find this useful. Again, we are on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and the YouTubes.
Yep.
You can find all of our show notes in any of those respective platforms, as well as thepainterandthepixie.com. And Serena, I think you wanted to mention just if they had any questions or queries.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, I really am very happy to answer them. So please feel free to contact me. Anything at all is totally fine. I'm really happy to answer that and engage with you and help you. And maybe if you have issues, I can help guide you at least to some resources that could be useful. Super happy to do that.
And Serena will have everything linked up. If you want to contact us, you can DM us on on our Instagram, which is @thepainterandthepixie. I think we have an email hooked up to that as well. And the email is thepainterandthepixie@gmail.com.
Yep.
If you are curious.
Yeah.
So
I think that's about it.
Yeah, that's it. That is going to do it for us this week, folks. Serena and I super appreciate you listening. I hope you have a very pleasant week. Yeah. Stay out of trouble, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Peace.
Amazing.